one of the communication styles that we find among African people is a call and response. So we have a number of chants that I'm going to say some words and you will follow with your part of this bargain, because communication is not unidirectional, it's circular and it's very organic. So I'm going to say, for example, organization is, and you're going to say the weapon of the oppressed. Later on I'm going to say strike is, and you will say the weapon of the oppressed. Next, class struggle is, and you will say the weapon of the oppressed. Lastly, I will say solidarity is, and you will say the weapon of the oppressed. Because sisters and brothers, in the struggle that we have, that we're waging against different forms of oppression, we must confront it with certain weapons. Therefore, organization is, organization is, organization is, organization is, organization is, strike is, strike is, strike is, class struggle is, class struggle is, class struggle is, solidarity is, solidarity is, strike is, class solidarity is, organization is. Okay, thank you, sisters and brothers. We have someone else coming up. So, Brother Ilian.
For a minute there, when Ajamu said, you know, organization is, and there was that silence, I was a little worried that we were like, holy smokes, we're here in Canada, you know, we kind of, you know, solidarity is, but we came through. So let's give it up for Ajamu. Next, we're really happy to have with us Sin Ryan, the president of the Ontario Federation of Labour. And it's really, really important for labor leaders at the regional and national level in this country or anywhere else that they put their money where their mouth is and not only struggle for workers' rights locally, but on international issues, and in this case in solidarity with South African mine workers. And Sid Ryan has always been a voice of internationalism, and we're happy that he's here with us. With the OFL backing us up in terms of organizing and building this rally. Let's give it up for Sid Ryan.
Sisters and brothers, I want to bring the condolences of the Ontario Labour Movement for the workers that were so tragically murdered in South Africa. The thoughts and prayers of the entire movement is with those families today. But I also want to say that state-sponsored terrorism is not just an issue in South Africa. And I'll remind you of the many instances that we're also familiar with, and sometimes we forget during these moments. I do recall the Oka crisis in Quebec, for example, when the Canadian Army was brought out against the innocent Mohawks who were fighting for their basic rights. I remember Dudley George was shot dead by the police in Toronto, or in Ontario. I remember in my own country, the British Army slaughtering people on the streets of Derry in 1972. Most of them were shot in the back, just like some of these miners were also shot in the back as they tried to flee the state-sponsored terrorism in South Africa. And I also recall, as a much younger man, I also recall Kent State University, where students were massacred on their campus because they were speaking out against the injustice of the war in Vietnam. So, on our own doorstep, let us not forget that we've had state-sponsored terrorism. I need to remind any trade unionist of what happened in Winnipeg not so many years ago, when you think about it, where workers were shot on the streets of Winnipeg because they dared to come out and ask the capitalist bastards for a decent increase in their wages. And that's precisely what we're faced with here today. It's capitalism run amok. We now see miners living in abject poverty, and the captains of industry don't even know what the villages outside of the gates of the mine industry even looks like. They don't realize that on a minimum wage, the miners are keeping alive the families of 8, 9 and 10 children in their own communities, trying to survive on minimum wage. As these capitalists make money hand over fist inside of South Africa and indeed all across the world. And we all thought 2 years ago that we had capitalism on the ropes, only to find out, of course, that they've turned the tables. And I got to hand it to them in a magnificent way. They turned the table against workers. And now in every single country in the world, workers are on the ropes. Now, whether it be in Europe or whether it be in North America, we're finding that labour is on the ropes. How could that happen, my friends? I'll tell you how it happened. It happened because we didn't hit the streets when we had the opportunity to hit the streets. We didn't go after these bastards, and I use that word not very often, but in this particular case, it is appropriate that we start to name what we're faced with here. So my friends, we have opportunities coming up in this country. You've got Tim Hudak, for example, who's saying that we're going to take away the basic rights of every single worker in this province. We're going to get rid of the RAND formula. What they're really saying, my friends, is exactly what Margaret Thatcher said to the miners in the UK and what Ronald Reagan said to the air flight attendants down in the United States. They basically killed the ability to raise money. They killed the ability to be able to mount political campaigns against the employers and against government. And that's the fight that we're coming to, my friends, here today. We are coming to a situation where workers better hit the streets, because if we don't, we are going to lose every single gain that we've made over the last 150 years of trade unionism. And that's the fight and the struggle we've got. And that's why it's so important that we stand in solidarity with the miners in South Africa. But at the end of the day, there's one thing we have to say. I don't know why they're not living up to this Constitution of South Africa, because it talks about the nationalisation of key industries, and that has not happened. And had that happened, my friends, we wouldn't have seen the massacre. We wouldn't have seen the bosses from London make the orders and say to workers, get back to work or you're going to lose your jobs, and then call in the state to murder miners in South Africa. That, my friends, was a big mistake of the ANC. They should have nationalised that industry. And that's a lesson for all of us, even in this country. I just came back from Argentina. And in Argentina, Christina Kirchner, and she's no left-wing radical, I can assure you of that much, but she went out and she nationalised the island, part of the oil industry in Argentina. And Evo Morales did the same thing in Bolivia. So it is possible. Hugo Chavez did it in Venezuela. You need to take a look at what's going on in South America if you want to see the way we should be putting on a fight in North America. Get down to South America, take a look at what's happening with those leaders who have the balls to stand up and say to capital, we are going to use those natural resources for the benefit of workers, for the benefit of our citizens. That, my friend, is the future. That's what we have to start fighting for. Thank you very much for coming out here today to show your condolences.
Let's give it up for Sin Ryan and the Ontario Federation of Labour that's standing with us here today. We're almost through our speakers. Our crowd is getting bigger, so we're feeling stronger. Susana Casha is with Mining Injustice Solidarity Network and also a member of the Latin American Caribbean Solidarity Network, which goes good with Sid's point about looking at the struggles in Latin America. Give it up for Susana. Give it up for Susanna, the Mining Injustice Latin American Network, the Latin American and Caribbean Solidarity Network. We're going to now have Jalil with the Workers' Communist Unity Party.
Thank you, brother and sister. I'm here to, as you mentioned, working from the Unity Party of the Mike. Show our anger. To show our anger, to show our frustration with such a massacre in South Africa. This incident, this horrific incident, proved that it doesn't matter who's in a capitalist system today, who's running the court of the capitalists. They treat workers as they did in South Africa, and we are witness such a horrific murder. And we are here to say that workers of Iran experiencing such a atrocity within last 30 years under the Islamic ruling in Iran, and workers of Iran are standing in solidarity with miners in South Africa, and they are the part of global movement for justice, for socialism, and to bring the capitalism down. This incident once more prove that, or show to the people across the world that this is the same way apartheid dealt with the workers in South Africa. And here he's showing our anger, he's showing to denounce such an atrocity, and we are beside workers in South Africa to win their struggle. Thank you.
Let's give it up for the brother. We're going to hear also from Jane Eyre. He's a